Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today here for a Royal Roads University webinar. You should be able to see my screen here. My name is Ariana. I am from the recruitment team here at Royal Roads, and I am pleased to be joined by Dr. Michael Young today to explore the Bachelor of Arts in Justice Studies. So before we do anything at Royal Roads University, of course, we like to acknowledge our traditional lands. So we do acknowledge that the campus is located on the traditional lands of the Wasepsum and Lekwungen ancestors and families. And we are very, very grateful to live, work, and play here, where the future of Indigenous and non-Indigenous staff, students, and faculty come together. So thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it. So of course, while you're all here, we are going to explore the Bachelor of Arts in Justice Studies today. As I mentioned before, I am with Dr. Michael Young, who is the program head, and my name is Ariana Konjerski, and we're happy to be here today. We just have a short agenda for you, so welcome and introductions. That's what we're doing now. We're going to do some program information, which Michael will walk us through. We'll speak about the application process, and then if you have any questions at the end, or throughout the session, of course, feel free to use the chat box. If you want to actually test out the chat box now, feel free to let us know where you're tuning in from and maybe what the weather is today. Today we are in Victoria, at least I'm in Victoria, BC, right here on Royal Roads University campus, and it's about overcast today, and it's a couple degrees, probably just above freezing. So feel free to let me know where you are in the chat. And with that, we will go right into the program overview, and I will pass it to Dr. Michael Young. Would you like to say a few words to kick us off here?
Certainly. Thank you, Ariana, and thank you for joining us if you're here in person, and if not, if you're joining us later virtually to see the presentation. The program, as we'll get into in just a moment, is really not a criminal justice program. I think that's the first thing that I have to emphasize for people, is that we're not just talking about the police, courts, and corrections. We're quite a bit expanded from that, although we are certainly grounded in a lot of ways to that system. Next slide, please. Great. So why should you study justice studies here? Well, there's a couple of good reasons. One of them is the fact that when we put this program together, we put it together as something unique in terms of justice and what we mean by justice. And from several areas, we took our lead, and what we ended up with was looking at philosophy, sociology, social work, and law as contributors, or 4 pillars to the program. And we do spend quite a bit of time focusing on the justice system, but we are more interested in all of, or who would say more interested, we're as interested in the other systems that intersect with the criminal justice system, because that's only one aspect of what constitutes our society in terms of care and control and other things justice related. And so in a few moments, we'll see what that looks like in terms of curriculum. But the other part of our program that really stands out is the fact that we use a very strong mix of academic and what we'll call experienced people, or pracademics, as I like to call them. They're academics who also practice justice. And so we draw people to teach some of our courses, not all of them, but many of our courses are taught by these pracademics. And they bring with them a rich experience and knowledge of justice-related issues and the education as well. So that's something that really showcases, I think, our model. So next slide, please. So once you've completed the program, as the slide says, you'll have developed some critical thinking, some communicational and professional practices that would enable you to work in many sectors. Now, these are just a few. So criminal justice is one of them, but there are many community-based justice services where people are situated. In fact, there are more of those opportunities than there are in the justice system itself. But even beyond that, we go into human services and social justice services. People sometimes go into advocacy. Some people go into conflict management. And that's related to alternative dispute resolution, restorative justice practices, community development. Some of the other things, we've had people going into insurance advising and adjusting, just to name one. We have people working often, and believe it or not, in areas of environmental rights. Even though we don't have a specific program on environmental rights, we do speak quite a bit about that in our curriculum. Many people also go off to law school, and other people pursue graduate degrees in different areas. Some people come back to our degree to get degrees at railroads for their advanced degree. Other institutions as well. We have people transferring into Great Britain for LLM, a legal master's degree, basically. And I'm going to try this. Yes, there we go. I found the button on the screen. It moved. Anyway, some of the options we have here, we have two options for you to complete. We have a 1 year on campus, then we have a 2-year blended program. And I'll talk a little bit about what each of those means in just a second here. And remember that people are coming in here, or if you don't know this, you probably do, they come to our programs with years 1 and 2 completed. And if they do not have years 1 and 2 completed, they come into our program if they're accepted under special arrangements. And let's talk a little bit about what that actually means. The 1 year program. This is a very intense program. It's 1 year that we've taken 2 years and crammed into 1 year. So you start in September, you finish in August, and you're essentially taking 4 quarters. And in those quarters, you're taking the equivalent of 5 courses. The last quarter actually is not as many classes because there's extra credits applied to the whatever option you take in terms of the applied research project or field placement, and that is a bit more credits. So, but regardless of whether or not you're taking the full 15 credits or if you're taking 5 courses or not, you're still taking 15 credits for that whole time in each of those. So you think about that. That's normally 2 years of study. You're doing that in 1 year, and you're doing it intensely because that's the only way that you're going to get through it. We're on campus generally from 9 to 5 kind of thing, 8 to 5, Monday to Friday. Now that does vary depending on the classes held on some days, but not others. So in those off times, you'll have team projects, you'll have assignments to do, exams to study for, nothing but a lot of work for you to do. And so keep that in mind. It's a big commitment, and the reward, of course, as you get through in 12 months. The so-called not reward is probably the amount of energy that it takes on your part. We do not have full-time housing available on campus for this particular option. We do for the next option coming up, which is a little bit different. But to go back to this last bullet point, you will have lots of opportunities, or you'll have access to many potential places for residents if you need such when you're here, if you're from out of province or out of town. Now, our 2-year completion program is a blended model, which generally railroads is known to have basically started this. And in that model, we have on-campus and off-campus course offerings. So generally our courses run for 9 weeks with a short break in between them. And I call that sort of a leapfrog model because as one course is finishing, the other one is starting. And so there's always an overlap. But there's 2 times of the year when this doesn't happen. The first one is your residency 1, and the second is residency 2 in year 2. So these are on-campus mandatory attendance is required. And generally what's happening here is that you're on campus again for some intense study. And in these 2 residencies, you take the equivalent of 6 credits, which is 2 courses. So that's, again, it's a little bit of a head down and keep working kind of approach, but it's short term. And the real reason we do this, well, for 2 reasons actually. The big one is that we like to have you on campus for this intense period because the people that you will meet in your residency, the people you will study with, will be the people that you study with and work with throughout the rest of the program. So that particularly applies to residency 1, which you start the program with. So if you think about that, it's a good way for you to get to know people in the cohort. It's a good way to set up some friendships and relationships that you can study with, and you can lean on each other. You can have each other there when you need to. We know that this is not an easy thing. Academic work is challenging, and it's sometimes good to have a sounding board for bouncing ideas off of. And sometimes it's just good to be able to connect with people who are in the same program as you, just to get some knowledge about experiences and what's working for them, what's not working for them, that sort of thing. You are not required to reside on campus. There is some campus housing available, first come, first serve kind of model. And the thing is to think about, we're only one program here of many that are offering a blended model of education. And so sometimes there can be some overlap in students coming and going. So far, after being here since 2005, I've never seen anyone go homeless. So unless they wanted to, but that's a different question. But that's, sorry, that's my bad humor, because that's an area that I work in for research, but we'll move on from there. Okay, moving into some of the courses and the content that we're talking about. In this program, because we're going quite far beyond the notion of criminal justice, and we're looking at issues of social justice, and I like to see or think of social justice as that area of society, or those areas of society that affect, by that I mean effect, not affect, effect, brings about some of the problems that we experience in society. So, for example, homelessness is often correlated with criminal offending. Substance abuse, the same thing. So if we look at what we'll call the antecedents towards the negative social behavior, we back up to find out where the causes of those problems are. And for that, if we look at something more social, we look at issues like education, we look at everything to do with upbringing, unemployment, any of those kinds of social issues that are often correlated with other negative effects, and then criminal justice system participation. Now that's sort of a very quick talk of what we're thinking about here, but if you look at our course list, which is on the right-hand side, we start by looking at where this whole justice thing came from, this history and philosophy of justice. We then go into different areas that are related to criminal justice, but also other levels of justice. So human services in the justice field, families and justice, international law and organizations, comparative legal perspectives and approaches, how other countries do the law thing. Then at the bottom, you'll see some alternative dispute resolutions and practice, gender diversity and justice. And in between there, we've got policy and ethics. So we keep you quite busy and keep you on a very varied track of what we're meaning by justice. And at the end of all of this, you are leaving the institution, you're leaving the program with a very full-bodied body of knowledge that you take forward into your next career, your present career, other studies, whatever it might be. And over on the left side, some of the content things that we're looking at interdisciplinarity. We're looking at human rights and the history of law, the history of where this thing called human rights came from. Determinants of health, determinants of justice, they kind of overlap. Development and political change. We hope there's political change. We anticipate there's political change if we want to do things differently and perhaps a little bit better. Having said that, there's no binary to this. There's something we keep working on throughout generations. We keep working on what it means to be just, what it means to be fair, what it means to have a safe society, which our Constitution speaks to. Those are just teasers. I'll stop talking. I'll move on here. And now I'm going to pass it back to Ariana.
Thank you so much, Michael. That was great. I always love hearing about the ins and outs of the course. It sounds really interesting. So without further ado, we have how to apply. So if you're thinking about applying to your Bachelor of Arts in Justice Studies, we have some information for you to hopefully make it a little bit easier here. So the first thing you would do when you fill out an online application is pay a fee of $131.39 Canadian. And then we also require some supporting documents. So what that looks like is official transcripts from other institutions, a personal statement, a structured resume, and 2 letters of reference, which can either be professional or personal. So the first step is rounding up those documents. And as far as admission requirements go, we have standard admissions and flexible admissions. So standard admissions for this program looks like a relevant 2-year diploma, so that's 60 credits, or a minimum of a 24 second-year credits with a minimum GPA of a B, which is a 3, from a recognized post-secondary institution. One of my favorite pieces about Royal Roads is the flexible admissions, which you could also fall under. So applicants can also be assessed for admissions on the basis of their skills, knowledge, and background throughout learning and work experience. So that would normally include evidence of 5 years relevant work in an area related to justice, academic achievement, and relevant work experience, or an ability to demonstrate the competencies expected of a graduate with a relevant 2-year diploma. So either of those options, just depending on your situation, could apply to you, and those will be assessed by admissions if you're applying to the program. If you are thinking of applying, we have some key dates. So the Bachelor of Justice Studies Year 3 and 4, August 28th, 2023 is the start date, with an application deadline this time around of May 28th, 2023. So you still have a little bit of time to get your applications in. But at Royal Roads University, we do assess applications on a rolling basis. So the good news is if you are thinking of applying, you can get your application in today and start gathering your documents. You don't have to wait. You're able to do that right away. So I encourage you to submit an application if you are thinking about doing so. It's always good to get ahead of the application deadline before it closes. Of course, we realize that going back to school is a huge commitment. So we do have resources and services available to you. We have, of course, financial aid and awards. They are wonderful. So they have financial resources that are available to you, like loans, bursaries, scholarships, other awards, student research scholarships, other funding, and emergency funding as well, which is always good to have. So if you're interested in financial aid and awards, the link is just right there. It's royalroads.ca/admission. Financial aid awards. Of course, you can always just type it into a search engine as well. We also have our wonderful enrollment services. They are equally as wonderful. They can be reached by email at learn.more@royalroads.ca, or the phone numbers also on the screen for local and toll-free. And they could really help you narrow down your program options, answer questions about your application, or connect you with students and alumni is also a wonderful thing that they do. So lots of resources that are available. So please, if you're thinking about it, do reach out and investigate kind of what supports are available. And with that, that pretty much wraps us up for today. Again, it's learn.more@royalroads.ca. If you have any further questions, we would love to speak with you. Michael, is there any final words that you'd like to say before we take it to questions?
Before we take questions, I saw there was one question in the chat there, but we can come back to that. Other than that, if you have questions that the admissions office can't answer for you, they'll send you to me or someone who can answer that question. So we don't expect that you'll have all of the questions that you'll probably end up with yet, but when you get there, let us know and we'll try to help you out.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We'll just go take it to the chat. So we have one question in the chat here. The program focusing on Canadian justice and law. What about international law? In percentage, how much of each would you estimate kind of takes more? So is it focused on Canadian law or international law, would you say?
It is Canadian context based. So the international law courses that we do have, there's one specific one, there's another, probably 2 courses that have that law in it. We are generally looking at international policies, international agendas that usually come out of the UN, UNESCO, international international human rights tribunals, legislation, that sort of thing. So we might look a little bit at what comes out of The Hague, for example, on war crimes, that sort of thing.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We have another question here, which I could take. What is the process to apply? Are the bursaries and scholarships competitive? Great question. Thank you so much. If you go to the financial aid and awards page, it's easy to find if you just go to the Royal Roads website. You'll see the full list of financial aid and awards that are available, and it's nice because you can kind of see like how much is the award for, and then just a little bit of criteria. So it really just depends on what you would fall under and what you'd be looking to apply for. So I would encourage you to kind of take a browse through that page and just see kind of what's available. And then for the ones that apply to you, put in an application for those. As far as the competitiveness, I think I'm not too sure because that would depend on a couple different factors, like what awards you'd be applying for. But yeah, that would be my best answer. And of course, the enrollment team is also super helpful. And that's learn.more at royalroads.ca. So they can also help out, or financial aid and awards should have an email on their page as well. And another question, when sending supporting documents, do they all have to be sent at the same time? Mailing and emailing options? They do not have to be sent at the same time. I believe it's an online portal, so you're able to kind of upload documents as you go. But like I said, if you're thinking of applying, the best thing would be to kind of gather as many documents as you can so you're ready to go. But I believe they can be uploaded on a rolling basis as well. I don't see any other questions in
There's
the
a hand up.
hand. Perfect. Okay, awesome. Let me grab that. Oh, somebody put their hand down. If you just want to type your questions, if you're able to, in the chat, I can also read them out. There's another question. With the blended model, you must go to campus for a certain amount of time, and is it mainly focused online? Michael, would you like to answer that one?
Certainly. Generally, it is primarily online. The blended model generally refers to those 2 residency periods. So you'll have 5 weeks that you're going to be on campus. The rest of it will be online. So in 2 years, that's a month and a week. It's not a great thing, but if it happens to be your vacation time, then yes, it kind of hurts. But it's also a trip to Victoria if you don't live here, which some people think is a pretty good, trade-off. But the other thing about the documents I could add to is that once you have applied, it is primarily a first qualified, first accepted. So that means generally that the sooner you have your documentation in, the better it is for you once you've decided to make that move. If you're waiting for grades because you're just finishing a college program or something, don't worry about it. I don't think we've ever had a time when we've rejected people. What we do have, though, is once in a while people don't get their documentation in time. That's a different problem. That has to be dealt with. So keep that in mind. We
Awesome.
don't compete at that particular, the way that you don't need a certain GPA or that sort of thing to be accepted. What you need to have is all your paperwork done. So it's more bureaucratic in that sense.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Michael. And yes, your microphones are muted. So if you have any questions, if you just type them into the chat, we can read them out loud for everybody here. And then, yes, there was a question about tuition, but Andrea, thank you so much. She just posted it in the chat for domestic tuition. For the next intake of the blended model, it is 17,234 Canadian, and for international tuition, it's 44,125 Canadian. So hopefully that answers that. And while we don't see any other questions in the chat, is that per year? That is for the program. Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, if you have any other questions, folks, again, feel free to be in touch with us. We would love to chat with you. You can also book an appointment with enrollment services online. And one more question. What about the blended classes if we live in Ontario in our 3rd year and we cannot get to BC? Yes.
You need to be here.
Yes. Excellent. Okay, folks. Well, thank you very much. Like I said, you can be in touch with us if you have any questions. I believe we will wrap it up on that note. And yeah, that's how many days? Sorry, a couple more questions. I am local, so we could do 1 year. What is the tuition for that?
The tuition is the same regardless of where you come from in Canada, if you are a landed immigrant or a Canadian citizen. So it's international is different, but it's still that amount that was shown. That's for the whole program. And so if you come from Ontario, the tuition is the same.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate you answering those questions, Michael. That's very helpful. Awesome. So yeah, go ahead.
I'm just saying there's how many days, I'm not sure what that question was referring to, but 2 weeks for the first residency, 3 weeks for the second residency. 14 and 21, I guess that's so I'm going to say it, but
yeah. Excellent. Yeah, that makes sense, and that's the amount of days that you would be here for residency. So if you're from somewhere else, you would be physically in Victoria for that time. So I hope that clears it up. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was a wonderful session, everybody. Thank you for asking so many questions. We truly appreciate it. Hopefully we got to most of them. Yeah, one more question from Olivia. Go ahead. I will give you a moment to type that in the chat.
I hope it's not a test.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't study.
Yeah, it's all good. That's great. And while we're waiting here just for any last questions, Michael, do you want to maybe give like a day in the life in the residency? What would, because we're on campus full time for the residency, what would a typical day look like for folks that are maybe coming from out of town and they're here? What would that look like?
Okay, I'll give you the view from the instructor perspective. So I'm going to meet you in the classroom, and in my course that I teach, we would start with generally a quick check-in about how everybody's doing, how their trip was to get here, etc., where they're from. I might ask them where they're wanting to go in terms of their education, if they have an idea. And then we would bounce into a short lecture, and then I would probably pull out some groups, have some group discussions. And we do that a couple of times, have a break, then do some more studying, and then probably after lunch, go into a larger group discussion and have some short presentations on their part. That might involve writing up on some of the charts, flip chart paper, posting it or sticking it on the wall and talking about the answers and that sort of thing. Other days I might have, actually I do have guests coming in to talk about certain particular topics of interest. Yeah, that's my course. Other courses have far more hands-on skills development. So that would be more typical for that course, but yeah, we move around a bit. Not that many courses are on campus. We have the two on the first one, and the second one is far more skills development in terms of working with people. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Michael. So we have a couple more questions. Hopefully that gave folks time to type it out a little bit. So with the blended, how does class time look? Is it through Zoom or on our own time to complete tasks, testing, assignments, etc.?
It is asynchronous, meaning that we do not teach online. We provide the course online. We provide times for you to be in touch with us, but generally you're working with your fellow classmates here to work through discussion questions, to do assignments and that sort of thing. So there are times we may have a Zoom meeting and we might call that office hours. Some people might call it office hours. Other people might call it just a time to check in, see what's going on, question and answer. Yeah.
Excellent. And then just another question. If we have a diploma, we'll enter the third year. Is the third and fourth year blended or online? Thank you.
Well, the third and fourth year can be blended, or blended meaning there's going to be on campus and online.
Yes.
So if you're taking the on campus only, then you're going to be, for the most part, in classroom on campus.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I haven't finished my last semester of my 2-year diploma, 3rd year entry. So my grades and GPA may still move around. Does this affect my application RRU requirements?
Same answer as before. You need the GPA to get in without being a flexible assessment. If your grades drop, then you'd be assessed flexibly. What that means is we don't ask for yoga pose. I had to throw that in there, sorry. We ask that you bring in some experience with you along with your educational experience. Because what we want is, we want to see people succeed, right? And so we don't want to set people up for failure. And so if you're not ready, you're not ready. But if you're close, then we're going to figure out how close you are. And if you are, then we're going to bring you in. That's not the question. The question is, that, will you succeed? That's what we want to make sure. So what's our GPA average? Our entry is 3.0 or is it 3?
It was 3.33, I believe.
So a B plus.
Yes.
So if you come in with a B and you're like a high B or medium B, that probably you're going to be all right if you've got a little bit of experience in the community. If you've volunteered or if you work in a place where there's interaction with people that require some skills in terms of dealing with people, then you're going to be probably all right. I'm not going to worry too much about it. If you come in with a C minus and you have no experience, then you're probably not going to do very well in the application for an assessment for flexible admission. So I hope that's not too convoluted, but really it's there, as I said, to make sure that people have a better chance of success, the best chance of success possible, because there's no point in us bringing people in who are not going to make it, struggle, and leave demoralized. And that's not our goal. I mean, that's not the kind of model that we have.
Excellent. Thank you. So being in the blended program, if I am out of province, I expected to be on campus with the blended model. Yes, there would still be the residency.
Yes.
Correct. Perfect.
Yeah.
And Maisam, yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you for asking wonderful questions. And hopefully that does clarify some things for you. Yeah, like I said, we are always available, happy to answer, and you can book appointments with the enrollment services advisors as well. So you can go online and do that, and they can have like the one-on-one conversations with you as well. Yeah, you're so welcome, Olivia. Thank you so much, everyone, for
Yes.
chatting in. Yes, Andrea from enrollment is here. You can book a Zoom or phone call with me. Yes, yeah, we would love to meet you. So thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for answering those questions. I know it provided a lot of clarity for some people. So yeah, we appreciate it, and hope to see you in a webinar in the future. Any last words, Michael?
No, other than we hope to see you in the fall. Huh.
Yes, absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. And we'll see you in a future webinar.